There is something deeply exhausting about carrying a version of your life that no longer exists, and yet most people do it every single day without ever stopping to ask themselves why. They walk around with old wounds, dressed up as memories, with conversations that ended years ago still playing on a loop somewhere in the back of their minds, with regrets so heavy they've become part of the personality. And the strangest part of all of this is that the people who suffer the most from the past are usually the ones who are most desperate to escape it. They are not choosing to stay stuck. They genuinely want to move forward. But something keeps pulling them back over and over again, like a current underneath still water that you can't see until you're already being dragged by it. So the real question is not whether you want to let go. You do. The real question is why letting go feels so impossibly hard, even when you know, on a rational level, that what happened is over and cannot be changed. The first thing you need to understand is that the reason you can't stop thinking about the past has nothing to do with weakness and everything to do with the way the human mind was designed. When something painful happens to you, a relationship that falls apart, an opportunity you missed, a moment where you said the wrong thing or trusted the wrong person, your brain does not simply process it and move on. Instead, it locks onto that experience and begins replaying it repeatedly, searching for an exit, searching for a version of events where the outcome is different, searching for something it will never actually find because the event already happened and the outcome is already written. Psychologists call this rumination, but the Stoics had a far more honest way of describing it. They called it the mind turning against itself. Marcus Aurelius, who was arguably one of the most powerful men who ever lived and yet spent decades wrestling with his own inner chaos, wrote extensively about the tendency of the human mind to create suffering not from circumstances themselves, but from the stories it tells about those circumstances. He understood that the pain of the past is almost never about the event itself. It is about the meaning the mind assigns to that event, the identity it builds around it, and the false belief that if you think about it long enough, you will somehow undo it. But here is where it gets even more interesting, and this is the part that most people never talk about. The reason you keep returning to painful memories is not just psychological habit. There is something much deeper going on, and it has to do with a concept the Stoics called attachment to a preferred outcome. What this means, in plain language, is that you are not actually grieving what happened. You are grieving the version of the future you had already built in your mind before things went wrong. Think about that for a moment. When a relationship ends, the grief is not just about the person. It is about the life you had imagined with that person, the version of yourself you were going to become alongside them, the safety and certainty that future represented. When a career falls apart or a dream doesn't materialize, the devastation is not just about the practical loss. It is about the identity you had already attached to that outcome. You had already decided who you were going to be, and now that version of you has been taken away before it ever had the chance to exist. The Stoics called this a failure to distinguish between what is in our control and what is not, and they believed it was the root cause of almost all human suffering. Epictetus, who was born into slavery and had every reason to be consumed by bitterness and resentment, taught that the moment you place your peace of mind inside an outcome you cannot control, you have handed your entire inner world over to chance. And chance is a brutal landlord. Here is where most advice falls apart, because most advice tells you to simply accept what happened and move forward, as if acceptance is a switch you can flip and moving forward is just a matter of deciding to do it. But the Stoics understood something far more nuanced than that. They understood that true release from the past is not about forgetting it or pretending it didn't hurt. It is about changing your relationship to it entirely. The Stoic practice of amor fati, which translates to a love of fate, is not about toxic positivity or pretending that painful things are secretly good. It is about reaching a place where you can look at everything that has happened to you, including the worst of it, and recognize that it is now an irreversible part of the fabric of your life. Not a detour from your path, but the path itself. The betrayal, the failure, the loss. These are not interruptions to your story. They are your story. And the moment you stop fighting that reality is the moment you stop being a prisoner of it. Marcus Aurelius practiced something similar when he reminded himself repeatedly that the obstacle is not separate from the journey. The obstacle is the journey. Every setback you have ever experienced has shaped the version of you that is sitting here right now, and that version of you is the only raw material you have to build anything meaningful with going forward. So what does this look like in real life when the memories come back and the weight of the past feels like it is sitting on your chest at 2 in the morning? The Stoics were not theorists. They were practitioners, and they left behind very specific tools for exactly these moments. The first is what Epictetus called the dichotomy of control, and the practice is brutally simple. When a thought about the past arises, you ask yourself one question. Is there any action available to me right now that can change what happened? If the answer is no, and it almost always is, then your mind's continued engagement with that memory is not problem-solving. It is self-punishment dressed up as reflection, and you are allowed to stop punishing yourself. The second practice is what Marcus Aurelius called returning to the present task. Not escaping into distraction, not numbing the pain, but genuinely redirecting your attention to what is real and actionable in this moment. What is in front of you right now? What can your hands actually do today? The present moment is the only place where your life is actually happening, and every minute your mind spends in a past it cannot change is a minute stolen from a present it absolutely can. The past is not a prison with locked doors. It is a room you keep walking back into because some part of you still believes that if you look hard enough, you will find a different ending. But the ending does not change. What changes is you. And the Stoics knew that the only way to finally leave that room behind is to stop looking for something in it that was never there, and to start building something in the only place where building is still possible, right here, in the life you still have left to live. You have survived every single thing that once felt like it was going to destroy you, and that is not a small thing. That is everything. So carry that with you, protect your peace, and keep moving forward because the best chapters of your life are still unwritten. Stay strong, and I will see you in the next one.